Hey guys, this is Dion here with your Guitar Academy and welcome to this John Frusciante player study. So in this course, I'm going to be taking you through some of the main things that John does in his playing. So that includes some use of the cage system. So I'm going to take you through some of those key shapes that he uses, as well as some tasty embellishments. And also we're going to be taking a look at that really chunky, aggressive funk rock style that John is really well known for. So in this first unit, we're going to be taking a look at some of the major and minor caged shapes that John likes to use in his playing, as well as how to kind of find them all over the neck. And we're going to be applying them to a simple chord progression as well. So in the first lesson, we're actually going to be taking a look at the major shapes and where we can find them, how we fret them, and all that other good stuff. So grab your guitar and let's get going. Before we get started, don't forget to head over to the website to find all additional materials, including tab, backing tracks, and also the lesson write-ups. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment, and we'd love to hear how you're getting on. Okay, so in this first lesson, we're going to be taking a look at some of those key major caged chord shapes that John likes to use in his playing. So if you're not familiar with the cage system, feel free to check out our caged course to kind of, get your bearings with that before you start this stuff. But essentially, it's just a way of taking open chord shapes and making them movable and using them all over the neck. So let's dive into this first shape. So this is going to be what's called the E shape caged chord. And we're just going to play all of these chords in this lesson in the key of A. So we're just going to center them around A. All right, so this is our first chord here. So as you can see, it's just the reason it's called the E cage shape, because if you take a look at my fingers here, my fretting hand, that looks very similar to an open E chord. Obviously, we would normally play an open E chord like this with these fingers. But if you do it like that, you move it up, and then normally you would bar across with your first finger like that. And obviously you can play this everywhere. That's the whole point of our cage system chord shapes. But there's kind of a specific way that John likes to play it because it enables him to grab some of these cool embellishments, which we'll be talking about later on in the course. So the way John plays it, so if we go back to this shape here, let me just explain the frets as well, just in a bit more detail. So this is obviously our root note of A there. I've got my third finger on the 7th fret of the A string, fourth finger on the 7th fret of D, second finger on the 6th fret of G. So as I said, normally you would bar across like that, but we're going to be using our thumb to get that root note. Okay, so what happens is our first finger actually comes down and it bars over these top two strings. So it's barring over the 5th fret of B and the 5th fret of A. So far that gives us this shape here. All right, so not here, just here. And then what happens is our thumb comes over like this to play the root note. So it's kind of an unusual feeling if you're not used to this, playing this chord in this way. The grip almost feels like you're kind of holding like a bat or something. That's what I always refer it to. It's like a sort of, you're gripping like a handle of a baseball bat as opposed to this, because your palm is much flatter to the fretboard. So that's our first caged shape. And again, I'll explain a bit more later on in the course as to why we're using our thumb. But for now, just get used to the feel of playing it that way. And again, these are movable everywhere. But for now, just try it from that 5th fret. That A major chord essentially is what it is. So that's our first shape. So the next shape we're going to have a look at is the C shape, which also combines nicely with the D shape on top as well. So we're going to go up to the 12th fret for this one. So if you guys are familiar with an open C chord, great. So we're going to make a movable chord shape out of this. So I want you to go up to fret 12. That note's an A. We're starting on the A string here. So 4th finger on the 12th fret of A, 3rd finger on the 11th fret of D, 1st finger on the 9th fret of G, which bars over to the high E string. So we're barring across there, the G, B and E strings, and then the 2nd finger plays the 10th fret on B. So it looks something like this. And again, that's a nice movable shape that can be played anywhere. So you'll see within that chord, this one, and this one here
look very similar to an open C chord, okay? Hence the use of the terminology C in caged. So what you can also do with this one is if you have a look on top, it looks very similar to a D chord shape. So if I move that up there to that 9th fret, bar across, you've got that little major triad, which is most famous, as I said, for featuring in an open D chord. So this is kind of two for one really in this shape. And again, I'll show you why, how this is useful for embellishments later on in the course. This unit is just all about, this lesson is just all about getting these chords comfortable. So that's our first one, the E shape. And then this is our second one, the C shape, up on the 12th fret. And then obviously the D shape tags on top there as well. And as I say, we're all just playing these all from A for now. So there's nothing, don't worry about jumping all over the place just yet. Just get used to those, get the feel for them. Often a lot of time people kind of struggle. If you haven't played bar chords before, it can be tricky to get that kind of, correct amount of pressure to make it sound nice and clear. So just take your time with that. The final two shapes that we're going to take a look at also kind of combine nicely, similar to the C and D shapes. So these are going to be the A shape. So obviously an open A chord looks something like that. So if we play an open A chord with barring with our 3rd finger over the D, G and B strings like that, we can move that around, and then we can also use our 1st finger. You can bar across there as well if you want to. I tend to just play the root note on its own. So if we want to play this from A, 12th fret still, okay? So 12th fret on the A string up there, 3rd finger bars across the 14th fret of D, G and B. And that's our A shape from our caged, A major shape of course, from our cage system. And this can tag on to the G shape as well. So the G shape, for me, it's not my first choice when it comes to the cage system, because the actual full shape of it is quite impractical to play. It's this kind of very, very stretched, kind of not very practical shape. And it sounds a little bit clunky as well. But what John likes to do is use kind of small bits of chords as opposed to full chords. So one example of that is if you take the top part of the G shape and you play it like this. So what's happened there is I'm barring across the 14th fret of D, G and B with my 1st finger, and I've got my 4th finger on the 15th fret of the high E. So if you have a look, I've taken away those bottom 2 strings there on that G shape, and I'm just playing from the D. So obviously that means that's not our root note on the bottom. That's not a G, but we'll come back to that. We'll kind of talk about how you can find these chords a bit easier. John sometimes used that kind of inner part as well, where he would use the 3rd finger on the 16th fret there, and then bar across still. It's basically just, compartmentalizing these chords a little bit, kind of, finding the good bit of them without using the whole chord. What's going to sound nice in this kind of funk rock context. So little recap there, that's our A shape. And then this part, if we bar with our 1st finger on the 14th fret, we can introduce our 4th finger up here on the 17th fret and play the top part of a G. And again, all of this is movable. It can go anywhere. So little recap, we have our E shape. And if we want to play in the key of A, which we have been, that's going to be from the 5th fret. Remember, very important to get used to using your thumb there. Curling that thumb over, unusual grip, okay? If you're not used to it, that is. So this, Frusciante's mad for this stuff, especially with that chord, but it was also very, very heavily used by Hendrix. And as we know, Hendrix is a massive, massive influence on Frusciante amongst, many other people as well. So it's a great, great thing to get used to if you want to start playing in this style. And then obviously the C shape up here. And then we had the D shape tagging on top of that. So we had kind of 2 in 1. And then up here, we've got our A shape. And then our G shape. Sometimes playing that there. And if you have a look at the workbook, you can see all of those chord boxes in there as well. So if you're thinking, okay, how am I going to practice these? How am I going to find these? So what you have to understand, if you want to find these chords quickly, which is very, very important in a kind of, song learning context, you have to know where the root notes are. So for all of them, except for the D shape and the G shape, the root note is going to be the bottom note, the first note that we play. So the root note here for the A is where the thumb is. Sorry, should I say the E shape? The root note there is where the thumb is. The root note for the C shape is where the fourth finger is. And the root note for the D shape is where the third finger is. And again, just take a look at your diagrams, your chord boxes that accompany this course, and you'll see all of these root notes in red, okay? The root note for the A shape is going to be on the bottom there again, where the first finger is. And the root note for this small version of the G shape is going to be on top, okay? So again, that is important because if you are given a chord progression, which we're going to look at in a second, you need to be able to know where these root notes are so you can grab these chords quickly. So for instance, if I want to play these chords in the key of G, okay, I need to know that that's a G. I can play that one there. The D shape is there. The C shape is there. The A shape is there. And the G shape is there. So because I know where these root notes are, I can recall them quite quickly all over the neck. Okay, so that's one thing that's really important. Chord shapes first, get comfy with them, get used to those root notes, and then everything else will follow. So have fun having a little go at that, and I'll see you in the next lesson. That's it for this lesson. If you want to go to the next lesson, you can click here. And if you want to go back to the beginning of the course, you can click here. And also, please like and subscribe. And also leave us a comment. Any questions, we'd love to hear how you're getting on.